Hi guys, welcome to Create with Monique. If you like art and craft DIYs, then hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. I have an awesome project for you guys today, so grab your coffee or your tea and meet me at the craft table. Hi guys, Creative Monique here and welcome back to my channel. For today's project, we're going to be using pieces of the etched butterfly transfer from Chalk Couture, a 8x8 box frame, and the dimensions for the actual frame insert part is 6 by 6 inches. The box frame itself is 8x8, so an 8x8 box frame. And I got this from Dollar General. They always have them in there, so whenever I go in there, I try to get, every now and then I try to get one or two. And also going to be using pieces of watercolor paper. So these are two 6x6 pieces I have for the insert inside, and a scrap piece. I think this piece is like a 3x6 piece. So, and we're going to be using some inks. I have my Catherine Pooler inks. We're going to be using some Tim Holtz Distress ink. The chalk paste colors I'm going to be using is Black Velvet and Bark. And gonna need some momentum, some black ink. I'm using Memento. Doesn't have to be Memento. It can be any black stamping ink that you have. I painted the frame with Deco Art Americana acrylic paint, and this color is Hauser Light Green. And I'm going to be using some Deco Art Glorious Gold, along with some Tim Holtz Distress Mica Stain in Winterberry. And I have my blending tools. And one last thing, I have some alphabet stamps in F, I, G in one. So we're gonna get started. Okay, so first things first, we're gonna ink up our watercolor paper. And this watercolor paper has a smooth side and a texture side. I'm going to be using the smooth side for this project. And I got this watercolor paper from a Canson XL watercolor pad. It was 140 pounds, I think. So yeah, that's the size that we're going to be using. And I'm going to ink it up using my Catherine Pooler inks and my blending brushes. I'm gonna go with the lighter color first and ink it up. And I have a tendency of, when I'm inking, of pressing really hard. So I'm I'm trying my best to press lightly so you won't see all my little swirls on the paper as I ink it up. And I think I'm doing a pretty good job um, with the inking up of it all. So I'm going to use the lighter color first, and then I'm going to use the lighter color first, and then I'm going to move to the darker ink color just to add a little bit more, just to add a little bit more interest um, to the panel and to the butterfly, because this is the piece of paper that we're going to be chalking the butterfly on. So that's done. And so next I'm gonna ink up, I'm gonna clean my pad first because I don't want to get the pink ink into the lighter color ink. So I'm gonna ink up this piece of watercolor paper, and this is gonna be what we put our text transfer on. And I want it to look like a little antique oldish. So that's why I choose the color of Distress ink that I did. for this project. And so these pieces of watercolor papers are 6 by 6 because they're gonna fit in. We're gonna insert them into the box frame, and the opening on the frame is 6 by 6. So we might have to shim them a little bit, and I think I do have to kind of trim them off a little bit to make them fit. Um, but yeah, they're 6 by 6. And right now I'm just adding some ink to the edges because, like I said, I wanted to have this older distressed kind of a look. So I'm putting ink a little heavier on the edges than I did with the previous inking. And I could have went with a darker ink color, maybe like a vintage photo or something, but I didn't want it to be actually that dark. Um, so that's why I used the color that I use. And then in addition to the 6 by 6 piece, we also need a smaller piece because I'm gonna make like a little label on the box springs, so on the box frame. So I needed a smaller piece of paper for that. So that's what I think that piece ended up being, like a 2 by 6, which is way bigger than what we're gonna actually need. So right here, I'm gonna chalk up the text part of the transfer, and I'm using the chalk couture paste color bark to do that. And I don't want the whole transfer. It's just certain portions of it that I want. I want the very top of it, and I want the bottom of it because there's like a little signature there on the bottom, and or a little notation. I think it's more like a signature where it was like, the scientist is like making their notes, and then they're signing it on the at the bottom when they're done. So I'm fuzzing right here. I'm fuzzing the transfer, even though we're putting it on watercolor paper, and that's technically like a fabric in a way, but it's still paper and it can peel up. So, and it's not necessarily fabric. So I had to fuzz it so it won't stick to the paper. And I'm chalking up the very beginning of the transfer, the top part, um, is what I'm doing here. And I'm sipping some tea as I as I voice this over. So I'm chalking up the top part of the transfer, and now I'm just taking up excess chalk, because you don't need a lot, and you can take it up, and I'm just putting it back in the jar. So next I'm going to chalk the bottom of the transfer, which is where the signature is. And I should have let it dry first, or blow dried it first, but since it was such a small area, I was like, maybe I can get it in without having to dry it, and then just let it all dry at the same time. So it's a balancing act here, which is why I'm holding the transfer the way that I am, is because I'm trying not to smear what I already have down. And it's done. And it looks good. It looks good. So what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna take that same bark chalk paste, and I'm gonna water it down because I decided that I wanted it to look a little more, not so new, not so, pristine. So I'm gonna water the chalk paste down, get it a little fluid, make it fluid. And I'm going to use a brush, and I'm going to splatter some of that onto the panel, moving my other stuff out of the way so I don't get any on it. And see, look, it gives it even an older, you know, a more aged look. So yeah, I really like that. So I'm gonna clean my Gonna clean up my pad. And next I'm gonna chalk the butterfly uh, using the black velvet chalk paste. So, and like I said, I did that on the smooth side because your transfers can stick to paper. You can wax them, but I never do. I just think it's not worth it. So I just chalk straight on the paper, especially if I put something on the paper, like I have the ink on the paper. I think it kind of helps. But that's just me. You can definitely chalk, wax your paper. And so I'm going to chalk this up with the black velvet. Just making sure everything is down good and snug so there won't be any bleeding when I pull up the transfer, and then I chalk it up, and I'm removing excess chalk paste, and I'm gonna pull it up. And so I'm having a little issue here with pulling it up. As you, I don't know if you can tell, but there's a couple areas where the paper is coming up with the transfer. See right there? And that's why some people wax. And if you fuzz really good, you shouldn't have that issue. But on paper, I think there's always a chance um, of it pulling up. So I'm just like maneuvering it and coming at it from different angles to pull it up where it doesn't really tear. And I'm not worried about the size because I'm gonna fussy cut this. Um, I'm gonna fussy cut this out, and yeah, I'm gonna dry it. Make sure it dries is dried really good, because if I start cutting it out and the chalk paste is still wet, then I'm just gonna smear it um, all over the place, and I don't want that. So I'm off camera here and I am drying the chalk paste. Okay, so I have it dried, and now I'm going to fussy cut the the butterfly. So this butterfly is on watercolor paper, and you can also buy a chalk suede, some chalk suede paper from Chalk Couture, and it is made specifically for you to be able to chalk on paper, but it's a little heavy. It's a little thick, I guess would be the word, and it's a little difficult to fussy cut. So if I'm just doing a straight up panel, and I don't have to fussy cut anything, then I definitely use the chalk suede. But if I am going to fussy cut, then I chalk on the watercolor paper and just take my chances, because the chalk suede can be a little difficult to fussy cut. But if you're cutting a shape like a heart or something, and you have a Cricut or a Brother or any like electronic cutting machine, then it is definitely the way to go. If you are gonna chalk on paper and then cut out a simple shape, definitely use the chalk suede, um, but yeah, not for fussy cutting. So I'm almost done fussy cutting out this butterfly, and it came out gorgeous. I really like the color in the background, the ink color that I chose. I really like it. Uh, and I'm being a little careful here around the antennae because they are delicate, and I was trying my best to make sure I didn't cut them off. Um, but I got her done. Okay. Just trimming it up just a little bit, getting down in those um, crevices. Okay, so it's done. And next, I'm cleaning off my mat. So next, what I'm gonna do is, since the chalk is all good and dry, this is where I'm gonna come in with the Tim Holtz mica stain. Um, well, this is well, first before the mica stain, I'm going to add some ink to my edges to make them darker, so they'll stand out a little bit. So I'm inking up the edges of my butterfly. Yeah, you see the difference in the butterfly in the before and the after. Now this is where I'm gonna come in with the mica, the Tim Holtz mica stain, and I'm gonna put it in a little splatter box, and I'm going to spray it. It's going to be gorgeous because it shimmers like the mica. It, you know, it you won't be able to tell it here, but once it dry, you'll definitely be able to see the mica. So now here, what I'm doing is I have my alphabet stamps, and I'm going to stamp the word figure one. And so my first attempt with the stamping didn't go that good. It was kind of spacey. I tried to get them as close and as straight as possible, but I did not succeed the first time. As you can see, the F, there's a big space between the F and the ig, the I and the G. So um, yeah, I had to redo it because I wasn't particularly happy with it. So I just stamped it again, and the second time it was definitely better. Everything was spaced really good, and what I'm gonna do next is once I get it all stamped, I'm going to use um, a die to cut it out. I would fussy cut it or use my paper trimmer, but it's such a small slither that I felt like I would probably mess it up since it was so small. It wouldn't be straight. So I used my die cutter, and um, I took it over to my die machine and I cut it out. And I also have a metallic gold piece of cardstock that I'm going to use as well. So I die cut the both of those at the same time. And I made a mistake, but I should have centered the the die cut into the figure, over the figure one, but I didn't. So I'll fix that a little later. As you can see, my screen got very, very blurry. Yeah, now we're back. Okay, so I'm over at my die machine, and I'm cutting out the label. I guess I probably might need to invest in a smaller die machine. Like I've seen people with the little teeny ones when you just need to do little small things, and you don't need to use the big boy. But yeah, uh, use the Platinum 6. So my label is done, and I was gonna trim it with the paper cutter, but I was like, no, I kind of like it long. And then that's when I was saying earlier, I should have centered the words in the space versus the way that I have it. But I'm gonna fix that in just a few. So I'm gonna glue I'm gonna glue the the label. I'm gonna glue the label together, and then this is how it's gonna look on the box frame. I was just contemplating if I want it like that, and I really liked it, so I decided to go with it. But there's so much space on the other side. I was thinking, like, what can I do that would take up that space that would make sense? So I'm thinking, like, going through my stash. And what I ultimately decide on is to use a butterfly stamp and see if I had a small butterfly stamp. So I'm going through my stash trying to find a small enough butterfly stamp that will work for the size of the label that I have. And I found one. Is a stamp set that I got from scrapbook.com, and it has a butterfly stamp on it that is shaped just it is the same shape of the butterfly that's in the transfer. So I'm just gonna ink that up and stamp it on my label. And since it's the stamp set is not new, I've used it a couple times, but I've not used the butterfly before. So if you're gonna see me over here in a second, just stamping the butterfly over and over, and that's because I'm trying to get it where when I use it, it'll give me a really nice clean stamp. Um, since it's new, and you don't always get really good stamping impressions from a new stamp. So I was just trying to season it a little bit, I guess would be the word. And so now I'm gonna go for it and stamp the butterfly. And look, it came out really great. And I'm gonna glue that down. Well, here I'm distressing, adding a little ink to the edges to make it look a little more seasoned, like it's been sitting out for a while. Give it a more antique look. There we go. And I'm gonna glue that down. And gonna put that between some stamping blocks so it'll glue really good, and so it'll adhere really good. So I put that between some stamping blocks so it would adhere to each other really good. And next, I'm going to take my butterfly that has now dried, and you can see the mica flakes. Look at the shimmer. Um, and the back panel that I chalked up, and that's what it's gonna look like. I was just making sure that everything worked. So the pan, like I originally thought, the paper is a little long on it's not sitting down inside the box spring because either the cutter was off or the box spring is a little off, like probably by 1/32 or whatever. It's just a slither, but I didn't want to use the paper cutter and cut it off, and I very well could have, but every time I do that, I cut it too short. So I was just gonna take my chances. So what I'm doing here is I'm using a Tim Holtz sanding pad, and I'm sanding the paper down. See if I can sand it down enough so it would just sit inside the box with no problem. So after a couple of attempts, it still wouldn't like go down in there. So I had to sand it some more. And yeah, and now things got a little blurry. I think we're gonna come back around in a minute and not be so blurry. Okay, so I got it close enough um, that it's gonna work. So what I'm doing now is I'm putting the ink back on the edges that I sanded off. I'm darkening the edges back up to make it look, I'm darkening the edges back up to make it look more antique. And then I'm gonna put it inside the box and I'm putting some using a tape runner to put some tape on the back, and I'm gonna add some glue also because I don't want this to be permanent, but I don't want it to just, to fall out. So since it's paper, I can, and I'm like gluing it, and it's not paper on paper, I feel like I can just pull it up and reuse it. So I'm not trying to make it a permanent thing. But I do want it to sit in there for a bit and not fall on its own. So I'm just pressing it in there really good and making sure it fits. And I'm going to attach my butterfly, and I'm just doing the center of the butterfly. Again, I did some tape and some glue, and I put some glue on the antennae because they're delicate, so I don't want those to be able to come up. I want those to be flat. So I only glue the center because I want the wings to kind of stand out. And I put a stamping block on top of it to make sure it adheres really good. And so what I'm doing now is I'm adding my label, and I did the same thing using tape runner and using some liquid glue, and I'm gonna put it on the box frame, and I'm gonna add a stamping block to hold it just for a second to make sure that it adheres um, to the box frame. And so what I'm doing now is I took the same chalk paste that I used earlier to do the splatters with, and I'm going to add it to the box frame because I want the box frame to look old as well. Right now, in the beginning it was just looking like freshly painted, but I don't want it to look freshly painted. I want it to look old. I don't want it to look distressed, which is why I'm not sanding it, but I do want it to look old. So I'm just adding the chalk paste, browning, aging it up, aging the box spring up a little, and make sure you get the insides and all around. Um, and I really like the way that it came out, getting in the corners really good. Like I'm just going to town. So you get the insides and all your sides. And if I'd have thought about it, I would have done it before I put the label on, but I didn't think about it until after I had the label on. I was like, this look a little new, and which is not the look that I wanted. I wanted it to look like an old specimen um, that's maybe uh, sitting on a desk somewhere in an office of an 80-year-old butterfly lover. Um, So what I'm gonna do next is, so the butterfly is adhered, but I want the wings to stick out. But my issue was I didn't want them to like, I just felt like they wasn't sticking out enough. So what I'm doing now is I took some foam tape and I cut it in slithers, and I'm going to um, roll it up and make it a little thicker and put behind the wings. So the wings will always um, sit up, with some dimension. and I'm pressing it down to make sure that it's sticking really well to the panel. And that's it. I'm done. I really, really like the way that it came out. I think it's beautiful. The butterfly is shimmering. It definitely is exceeded my expectations of what I thought it would look like when I was done. So thank you all for hanging out with me at the table today to make this really cute project. You guys go and have a creatively awesome day, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye now.